Let me start over then. Good afternoon. Welcome to CEC's webinar program. Our presentation today is on the use of the UStars Plus materials, which have recently been published by CEC, which is concerns recognizing and nurturing the potential of K-3 students from diverse backgrounds. We are fortunate to have as our presenter today Dr. Mary Ruth Coleman, the developer of UStars Plus. Dr. Coleman is a senior scientist at the Frank Porter Graham Center at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and she is a well-known scholar in the area of giftedness in young children. Before we get started, there are a couple of things about the use of our webinar software that I'd like to mention to you. First of all, my name is Kathleen McLean. I'm on the staff of CEC, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. Now, you can ask questions of the presenter by using the chat area that's near the bottom of your screen. The presenter will answer your questions probably during the latter part of the webinar, but please enter your questions at any point during the presentation that your questions arise. If you have any technical problems during the webinar, you can let me know in the same way by using the chat area on your screen. As you heard when we started, the presentation is being recorded. The recording will pick up the presenter's voice, Dr. Coleman's, and what appears on the central part of your screen. So your voices will not be heard or recorded, so it makes it very important to use the chat area to ask your questions. There is one slide, number 4 I believe, that asks for a response from you. And you just click the most appropriate answer and hit the submit button, and the system tallies your answers and displays a bar chart to everyone. If you're attending in a group, and I know that we encourage people to do this, choose the answer that is representative of most of your group. Now, one question that we often get is, will I receive a copy of the presentation afterwards? The answer is yes. You'll get an email tomorrow with a copy of the webinar, audio and video, attached. You can download it to your computer, unzip it, and replay it at any time. In addition, you will receive a link to a SurveyMonkey evaluation form. Again, this is tomorrow, and you can use that to give us feedback on the webinar. And also, if you want to receive a CEU for your participation this afternoon, then you use that form and fill out your name and address information. Remember, if you lose your internet connection anytime during the webinar, just bring your browser back up again and log in the same way that you did before. Yes, there's one other thing that we want to ask you to do. Is we have a very small group today. We would like for everybody to use the chat area to say where they are from. That would be very helpful to Mary Ruth as she is doing the presentation. So Mary Ruth, I'll turn things over to you now.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. And it is so nice to have a group to talk with about UStars Plus. And I first want to kind of start, however, by saying that Kathleen indicated that I was the developer of UStars Plus, and that is true, but the development of UStars Plus has been a multi-year process working with school districts in Colorado, Louisiana, North Carolina, Ohio, and working with teachers in the classroom to see how we could figure out together an approach to better allow us to recognize children with high potential that have historically been overlooked in gifted education programs, and how to nurture that potential. So this has actually been something that has evolved over the last 15 years with the support of the Jacob J. Javits grants. And this has come to scale and is operational in several states and several districts. And we continue to learn from the teachers who are implementing this. So it is a very dynamic program. Council for Exceptional Children is the publisher of the U-STARS materials. And what this does then is it makes it available for others who would like to put this into their schools or into their districts. So what we're going to do is kind of walk through what is U-STARS Plus anyway, and why might it be of interest to you or your school, your classroom, your district, or your state. And the way this will work is because, as you know, we're kind of in a webinar format, I will be going through the slides and the information, and at the same time I'll be trying to monitor the chat box. So if I get a little distracted, you'll know I'm looking at, for example, Jim, Jeanette, and Bernice, who are from Mingo County, West Virginia. Welcome. We're so glad you're with us. So go ahead and let us know who's here, and we are delighted. If you have questions, you can put them there, and we will save some time for that as well. U-STARS Plus actually stands for Using Science, Talents, and Abilities to Recognize Students, Promoting Learning for Underrepresented Students. Many of us, if we have a background in gifted education, are aware that one of the persistent difficulties we have faced and continue to face is the underrepresentation of children of color, children from linguistically diverse families, and children with disabilities in our high-end programming. And when we think about that persistent gap between the children we're identifying for high-end learning and the children we are serving in our general population at school, we've actually reached a point where I believe it is the most important aspect of the work we can do as we move forward looking at high potential. I just saw Kim Lewis, and she's joined us from North Carolina. Deborah Hall is here from Tulsa. So we are delighted that people are joining us. Why did we pick science? This project has been developed over the last probably 15 years. When we first started with science as the theme, it was not really an area, you might recall, of high attention. All the reading exams were coming out, and the assessments were kind of driving us to look at reading, and particularly looking at reading for students who may need additional support to come up to grade level. So when we first started with science, we said, we believe that science holds a tremendous amount of potential. The Glenn report had just come out, and other reports were saying that elementary science was not being taught deeply and richly. But we also felt like science was a good vehicle for students who had emerging language and other kinds of things going on. Well, now science is at the forefront. STEM is front and center. We have emerging standards for the science area. We have assessments for the science area. And we understand how critical science is to the well-being of both our country, but also to the well-being of young children. So let's go ahead and let everyone log in and indicate, are you primarily, you or your group, a gifted education teacher, a general education teacher, an administrator in gifted education, principal or school administrator, central office, state level, instructional support provider, higher education faculty, or other. So if you would go ahead and take the poll, then what we will be able to do is get a sense of who is with us today. Now, Kathleen, when they take the poll, will we be able to see their responses pretty quickly?
Yes.
Okay.
You should put in a response also, Mary Ruth, and hit the submit button. And then
okay.
the bar graph.
Perfect. There we go. Oh, there we are. Oh, look, I'm learning. Okay. All right. So we have some higher ed faculty. We have a bunch of others. Maybe the others would like to come into the chat room and let us know what role and who you are, and we can kind of look at that as well. A lot of gifted education and some administration. All right. When we think about U-STARS Plus, the major purpose of this work was to support teachers in recognizing and nurturing children with high potential who have historically been viewed as either at risk or viewed from a deficit lens. Now, my background is general education and special education and gifted education. And so as we think about this, U-STARS was born from this as well. So when we think about children who have historically been viewed as at risk and who remain underrepresented in our high-end classrooms, we know that across the country, children from economically disadvantaged families, culturally and linguistically diverse children, and children with disabilities remain underrepresented. When we think about the goals for UStars Plus, the goals really hinge on helping teachers shift their view so that they know what they're looking for when they're looking for high potential in young children, kindergarten through 3rd grade, so they know how to set up a classroom that responds and supports high-end learning, and so that the climate in that classroom can become emotionally supportive, allowing children to show us their best stuff. Okay? So what is the heart of UStars Plus? The heart of UStars Plus, whoops, I'm doing this, there we go. The heart of UStars Plus is this cycle. Create a nurturing environment, recognize student strengths, and respond to those strengths by scaffolding upward so that students have a chance to continue learning and continue growing. When we think about the nurturing environment, teachers of young children are often really good at nurturing the emotional side of children. We understand that a child needs to feel safe and supported and secure. And we get that, and we're really pretty good at that. And we establish environments where we address that emotional and social side of the child. But with young children, sometimes we don't nurture the intellectual and cognitive side quite as well as we can. With young children, when we nurture the intellectual side, we provide challenge. We provide appropriately complex kinds of activities. We provide choice that allows students to develop their interest and their self-determination. We provide novelty and flexibility. We engage children at the highest level possible and support their success in reaching high levels. I understand that we have college faculty with us, and I'm checking in. We also have administrators and others that are joining us. Welcome. When we think about the components of UStars, what is it that makes UStars Plus UStars Plus? There are 5 key components. The first is that high-end learning opportunity, creating a classroom where students can grow and thrive and can be involved in the highest level of engagement. Now, this takes place in a kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade general education classroom. So what we are talking about is helping the teacher learn how to do dynamic assessment so that they can monitor and kind of see where the students are in their mastery and can move students forward when they have mastered material. This also allows us to help teachers develop differentiated instruction strategies so that they can begin to plan and administer activities that are geared toward high-end learning. When we think about the high-end learning environment, again, we think about nurturing that potential and nurturing that intellect. Curriculum compacting is a starting place with curriculum differentiation, tiered assignments, learning centers, independent and small groups, and higher level questioning. We're going to look at that later as we move forward and look at the overall UStars model. And the use of flexible grouping strategies and regrouping strategies is part of the high-end learning environment. We've also developed 2 sets of materials that can begin to support teachers as they learn to kind of flex their wings with this, and they learn how to do the higher level questioning and learn how to incorporate different things. And we'll learn more about those materials, the UStars Plus Science and Literature Connections and the UStars Plus Family Involvement Packets. The second point of the STAR, and we call this the big STAR, is teachers' systematic observations. And we're going to learn more about that as well. Teachers' systematic observations, we have a tool called the TOPS that teachers use to help them look for strengths in all their students and help them recognize patterns of strengths that will assist them in planning for high-end differentiation opportunities for their students and will help them in making decisions about possible nomination for formal identification. At this point with young children, remember the operative word here is recognize. Please notice it doesn't say identify. It says recognize. But if we recognize a strength in a child, we are honor bound to respond to that strength and nurture that strength so the child's potential can be reached. When we think about the third point, science, hands-on inquiry-based, this is the area where we believe is so critical to U-Stars because it helps us look at promoting thinking and looking at achievement across different domains as we begin to integrate reading and math and real-world kinds of experiences into the child's science life. U-Stars Plus materials are all tied to the standards, and we're actually getting ready to do a walkthrough with the new Common Core state standards as well that are emerging. There's not yet a set for science, but there is a set for literacy, so we'll be looking at that. And as we go forward with the standards and they emerge for different states and different districts, we strongly suggest that districts and schools walk the materials into their existing standards so that teachers know what and how they're supporting the development of learning. Focus on exploration and problem solving and not just traditional expository kinds of learning, but fostering reading and math and writing within a science base. The next star, the fourth star, is the family-school partnerships. And this is a key aspect because many of the schools that we're working with are Title I schools. They're highly impacted by poverty. They're highly impacted by changing kind of dynamics within the school, highly impacted by diversity. And oftentimes the family involvement in the schools when we first begin working as a U-Star school is very low. Families may feel disenfranchised. They may not feel as though they're welcome in the school, or they may have limited access and ability to participate in meaningful ways. So the family-school partnerships is critical. We look at ways to involve and engage families. The family science packs go home to families so they can work with that. And by the way, they go home to all K-3 students. Effective parent conferencing is a key part of this around the strengths that we get from the observations. And then also cultural resonance and an understanding of the different kinds of needs that our families might have and who they are and what they bring and their strengths as well. The final point of the star is slightly different than the others. The final point is the infrastructure or the building capacity for systems change. In other words, how is it at the school, classroom, and district level that we are going to put this in deeply, put this in so it's integrated into the fabric of what we're doing and not seen as just, oh my goodness, one more thing we have to do. So we ask for schools and districts to look at how this fits with science initiatives. How does this fit with Closing the Gap initiatives? How does this fit with existing STEM initiatives? How does this fit with reading initiatives? How does this fit with family involvement plans? How does this fit with overall enrichment and gifted education? How does this fit so that this can be modified and adapted? We look at capacity building and leadership development. We look at fidelity of implementation at the district, the school, and the classroom level. And we help districts and schools and classrooms look at accountability for ways that they are implementing. I just noticed that Jeffrey Bell logged on. Welcome. And this is ISD in Texas. I think I'll be with you in Texas at a later point in the year. So as we think about how we are recognizing and nurturing potential in young children, we really are focused on children who have historically been viewed as at risk and who have historically been underrepresented within high-end learning and gifted education programs. When we think about the actual core beliefs that this is anchored on, and as you look at these core beliefs, I'd like you to think, do these resonate with you? Are these beliefs that are reflected in your current philosophy? Are they beliefs that you feel fit within your gifted education planning? Are they beliefs that fit within the other kinds of initiatives that you may have in your district if you're doing multi-tiered systems of support or response to intervention approaches? Are these beliefs that we consider to be core for U-Stars a good fit for you? And I'd love to see you chat in and kind of let us know if one in particular resonates with you so that you have a sense of that these are not just abstractions. These core beliefs were worked out with schools and teachers and districts across the country over time. We believe that all children deserve access to challenging and enriched learning, that they all deserve to be viewed as at potential instead of at risk, that science is naturally interesting and engaging, and for young children it's absolutely captivating. Family involvement is key to the sustained support for young children, for all children actually. And the support that we provide to a teacher is critical to help the child be successful. It's not enough to just say, oh my gosh, if you were a good teacher, you'd know how to differentiate instruction. If you were a good teacher, you could reach the range of needs in your classroom today. No, we have fabulous teachers who need support. They need ideas, they need materials, they need a team of people working with them, and they need to have the knowledge and skills so that they can work successfully. So chat on in and indicate, is there one of these core beliefs that really resonates with you, and which one is it? And we'll look and see which of the ones seem to be really resonating the most. Is it all children deserve access to challenging and enriched curriculum? The way that we work with this one is that high-end learning environment, that first point of the star. Curriculum differentiation, dynamic assessment, flexible grouping, and classroom support materials. This is how we help teachers create that environment where there's what we would think of as high-hanging fruit, fruit that is at the top of the tree so that the children have to reach on their tippy toes. I want that. It looks fabulous. And we can say, fabulous, and if you can't reach it, we have a ladder. Would you like that? If you can't reach it, we'll show you some strategies to shake the tree. You can get that down. If you can't reach it, we'll help you climb the tree and get that, because we believe every child should be allowed to work at the highest level possible. I see for Kim Lewis it's the parent involvement piece, and for Jeff, all of the core beliefs, and for Jeff's group, really believe that children should be given the highest challenge possibly and scaffolded to reach those beliefs. You guys are right in line with U-Stars, that is for sure. When we think about the high-end learning environment, we've put together what we believe is kind of the most direct toolkit. Differentiation instruction and universal design can take many, many forms, and it can be extremely complex. But what we have found is that busy teachers need us to cut to the quick and say, here is what we can do. So the professional development modules, this is actually one of the overview modules, slightly modified for a shorter amount of time. But in the professional development modules, there are modules 3, introductory and intermediate and advanced, on creating differentiated instruction, high-end learning environment. There are 7 modules altogether. They reflect the points of the star with some additions around helping us nurture and recognize children, gifted children from culturally and linguistically diverse and economically disadvantaged families. So within the professional development modules, we go through with teachers. And these are, by the way, the professional development modules will be published very, very shortly. I believe within the next 2 weeks they should be available. They're listed in the catalog now, but we are working on the final polish of these materials. Curriculum compacting, tiering of activities, a mastery level, an enrichment level, and a challenge level. We believe all children should work toward the enrichment level. This is why we're with regular education. Learning centers and learning stations, and learning centers and learning stations that are tiered. So within the activities provided for children, there are mastery tiers to work on, there are enrichment activities to work on, and there are challenge levels. And we specifically model and help teachers develop this and give them some concrete starter places, independent and small group contracts and projects, and effective questioning for higher order thinking. That effective questioning cuts across all the areas and cuts across what we do. The science and literature materials are designed to give our teachers kind of a model for how to work with this and how to move this forward. The second core belief, that all children deserve to be viewed as at potential, all children. This is central because historically we believe the lens that we have looked at young children from our culturally and linguistically different families, our children from economically disadvantaged families, and children with disabilities, historically the lens that we've looked at has been a deficit model. No child deserves to be looked at with a deficit model. All children deserve to be looked at through their strengths. We have developed a systematic teacher observation form, and there are two versions of this. One is actually the whole class tops, and with the whole class tops, we ask teachers to begin by looking at all of their children. We do that because we think unless you take a solid, deep, kind of honest look at the behaviors of your children, you may jump to a conclusion about a child and not give them the full benefit of the at potential lens. We then have the individual tops that follows up the whole class tops for some students. As we look at this, we firmly believe what Kepler is reported to have said. Now we don't have a direct citation. I'm not sure who was writing all this down back then. But he is purported to say, be careful how you view the world. It is that way. If you view your kids as at risk, if you view your kids as problematic, if you view your children through a deficit model lens, this is what you begin to get. So the TOPS is critical, and it actually may be the most critical part of what we do with U-Stars. You can do the science and literature, and you can do the family involvement, and you can do the family take-home packs, and you can do any piece of U-Stars, and it will work as a standalone. But you really can't call it U-Stars unless you are intentionally, systematically, explicitly watching for high potential and recognizing this so you can fold that into your planning and differentiated instruction at the high end. So what are the 9 domains in the TOPS? And each of these domains has a set of behaviors. These were developed with teachers. So we asked teachers years ago, what would you see if a child learns easily in your class? By the way, the domains were developed through careful and comprehensive literature review, vetting by experts in the field, and then work with teachers and other instruments, a review of other checklists, other observation instruments. In the TOPS, what's different about this is we don't have numbers. And if you are familiar with the TOPS, what you would find is it is a folder, and as you open the folder, each of the domains is there along with indicators for that domain. The interesting thing is when we look at domains like Learns Easily, which is a widely supported domain for children with high potential, children who may be gifted and talented, what we'll see is that some of the indicators seem to be things that we love as teachers. Learns Easily has lots of information, shows strong memory and quick recall. But as you look at the indicators within each domain, you'll quickly notice that some of them are what we call not so teacher pleasing. Some of them like refuses and becomes impatient with tedious and repetitive work, appears bored and rushes through the quote easy work, corrects the teacher. If this sounds like it, and we just got a chat in that says it sounds like the Kingor observation profile. Yes, and this was developed simultaneously with Bertie's work. This is a little less, in some ways, a little less cumbersome, but it fits very well with Bertie's work. And Bertie actually added some of the less teacher-pleasing domains to her work based on our work with TOPS. So she and I are good colleagues and friends and have worked together. One of the differences with the TOPS is that we have actually developed this very intentionally with children who've been underrepresented in mind. So the behaviors and the domains were picked because they can help us recognize potential in children who have often been underrepresented and disenfranchised. But yes, very, very good observation, Jeffrey. That's excellent. All right. So for each of these 9 domains, there are indicators and there's a box. When you're observing the whole class, you jot the names down. And when you're doing the individual, you jot down dates and a quick reference as to what was going on for the teacher. This is designed to help teachers recognize high potential. It's designed to help us shift so that we understand the characteristics of the child in multiple settings and a variety of behaviors, to keep our eyes open to the strengths of all students, teacher-pleasing and non-teacher pleasing, whole class to individual, and it involves all of our children. So it is very inclusive in its initial observations. The second core belief about science, well, this is huge. We think that science for young children, particularly children whose language may be emerging, either because they come from a family where words are not used as deeply or as often or as in many ways, or because they come from a family where words are used, but they're words in another language and we as the teacher don't understand the words that are used. Science is an ideal platform. It promotes thinking and it promotes language development. And the research on this for our English language learners is clear. Give kids something to do while they're learning, and they will wrap the words around what they're doing. Captivates student interest through real-world settings, focuses on exploration and problem solving, not just writing and talking. This is the Before It's Too Late that came out in 2000 when we were doing the initial scale-up for USTARS. It had been developed prior to this, but we were beginning to move it forward. And all the way back in 2000, as a country, we were calling for additional emphasis in science. It's actually taken us a while to get there, but I think we're there now, that's for sure. Why science? Well, if anybody's worked with young children, you know that it is a highly, highly engaging platform. Children they thrive in this environment. And because of this, it also allows us to observe. A principal in one of our school systems here in North Carolina that is just beginning to implement the model said when she was hearing about this and was thinking about this, just last week I was in a classroom, and when I went into the classroom, the teacher was involved in a pretty solid, pretty engaging reading lesson. But as I began to observe, and she said, and I spent an hour and a half in the classroom, and she said, as I was observing, there was one youngster who was just all over his chair, falling out. This was a 2nd grade classroom, by the way. And this child was completely disengaged in the lesson, was fidgeting, was all but up and out of the chair, and I think had the teacher not been constantly saying, stay in your seat, stay in your seat, this child would have been roaming the room during this reading activity. The principal was taking notes carefully and noting referral for special education, maybe behavior attention deficit, maybe other things, check on the background. Is this an ELL child? What's going on for this child? Making notes to herself so she would remember to check in with the teacher. She said they shifted from reading to science, and the teacher had set up science tables around the room where they were looking at rocks and different kinds of things. She said at this point, she began to see an entirely different child. She said the child actually took the lead on the cooperative learning activity. The child was very motivated and interested and focused. The child is the one who set up the array to keep the information straight about what the rocks were and what was going on with the rocks, and was doing this in broken English as an English language learning student, but was able to communicate enough that his group was able to follow him. So what the principal said immediately was, oh my gosh, if I'd had the tops in my hands, I would have understood what I was seeing. And she said, I've got to get back to this teacher. Well, it turns out that her school is coming on board this week, so we will be able to recognize and nurture the strengths for this youngster. when we think about students and science, it is a natural fit. And again, it is now an emerging area where we are more and more seeing STEM initiatives in school districts. Best practices tell us about the inquiry base, conversations, open-ended activities, rich content that is process-ladled, real-world authentic settings for learning, and the ability to integrate other curriculum, allowing kids to do math talks within science, allowing students to read for information within science, allowing students to begin to see that science links with lots of areas and is actually central to our understanding of the world around us. So the USTARS Plus science materials, well, one is a science and literature connection, and the other is a family involvement pack. Jeffrey, you asked when I'll be in Texas, and it won't be later this month. I'll actually be with the Fairbanks ISD in Houston on March 26th. USTARS Plus Science and Literature Connections brings the science and literature together. What we've done is we have book summaries. The books that we've chosen for this are high interest and usually available in the elementary school library. The concept maps show how information is related to science, and we use Bloom's taxonomy. And in these materials we use the original Bloom's. Now we have considered moving to the new and emerging Bloom's, and we may in future editions do that, but the original Bloom's is pretty straightforward and it works, particularly for teachers who are very, very busy. So we are sticking with this for the moment, although if districts are already using the new and revised Bloom's, it's a pretty straightforward translation to that if they wanted to relabel the areas of questions that are asked in science and literature. These also provide specific lessons that link and specific activities that link with trade books. So there are, oh my goodness, how many books have we done this for? Once we begin with this, there are books for the lower primary level and books for the upper primary level. And 7, 8, 9, 10, there are like 20-some books that we've already done. But we also provide a template so teachers can use books that they like to use, and they can begin providing similar kinds of books for this. And within the activities there are presets and follow-ups, and the book is also tied to units of study that we might be covering. And the units, of course, are tied to the standards. So the core belief about family, and this, one of our participants, Kim Lewis, said this really, really resonated with her and with her district. And I know your district, I think, and so I think you're absolutely right. Family involvement is critical. If we have Title I schools in our districts, we know that this is mandated. We know that family involvement is absolutely a key part of this. So when we think about family involvement from a USTARS Plus point of view, we really are looking at how we can create engaging programs for families, effective conferences, the family science packs that we'll see in just a minute, and again, that cultural understanding of who our children are, who our families are, and a respect for their strengths as well as their child's strengths. The family packs are science in a bag. They are created and they go home with every child, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. They don't go home as a cold call. They go home as part of a science unit. They go home after parents have been introduced to this, and we build the science in a bag around a Ziploc bag with the materials. Now, I will tell you the most expensive item in the Ziploc bag is the Ziploc bag. So they're designed to be really budget friendly, and each child takes one home, and they do a guided experiment with conversations with their family. These have been translated into Spanish. So our Spanish-speaking children and families take both sets home. They take the English version and the Spanish version home so they can begin to use them in both areas. We have lots of tips for teachers in terms of how to get families involved and how to protect children whose families may be unable to support them in this. The family involvement piece is critical to the success of USTARS, but also critical to the child's success. And the goal of this is kind of, I don't know, it's almost a little surreptitious, if you will. The goal of this is to get families involved in an academic experience with their young child. Not just volunteering in the school or coming to see their child dance or sing, which is fabulous and wonderful, but getting families involved in an academic format so that they can begin to have conversations, and the materials have family questions and family guidance for them. And they're open-ended so families feel comfortable with this. So it is very family-friendly, and it is a way to kind of pull families in to an academic involvement, supporting their child learning and becoming familiar with what we do in schools. Core belief to support the child's teacher, critical. And this is the systemic change belief. Systemic change is absolutely critical. Building capacity for leadership at the school, the district, and the state levels, and helping us put this kind of approach in deeply so that when a teacher moves or a principal moves or a superintendent shifts, this becomes part of the policy, the professional development, part of the culture of the school is strength-based, high-end learning, scaffolded support, the use of accountability to hold ourselves accountable for meeting the highest level of needs within our students. Now, when we think about this, many of our students continue to be denied access to high-end nurturing opportunities in their schools. And very often, these are the students that need it the most. Schools of high poverty are very often the very schools that do not have gifted education programs, nurturing programs, programs where teachers are coached and modeled and supported in differentiating at the highest ends of the continuum of learning, and they understand how to support and scaffold for teachers. So USTARS Plus is designed to work within schools where we can partner gifted education, general education, STEM initiatives, reading initiatives, closing the gap initiatives, initiatives that focus on science, all kinds of initiatives can partner to help this go in fully and deeply. I want to share with you some of the findings for this work. We had 3 studies that we've conducted over time, over a 5-year period. One study was a gold standard study with treatment and implementation schools, delayed onset implementation for comparison. These were randomly assigned schools. We used schools as the unit with matched pairs, a randomly assigned implementation school with a comparison school that had been assigned to the matched pair prior to, based on the district and the demographics and similarities. So in other words, we had matched pairs. Matched pairs went into the random assignment, and one of the matched pairs were selected to be an implementation, and the other was selected to be a delayed onset implementation comparison school. In the initial funding cycle for the work, all schools that were going to be working with us in the grant and the scale-up development had to agree that if selected randomly to be a comparison school, they would be willing to help us with data collection and delay onset for 2.5 years, implementing in the 3rd year with our direct help and direct instruction. The second study was a trend study looking at how we move forward with access and identification patterns in the district, looking at disproportionate underrepresentation. And the third study was a Pockets of Excellence study. I'm going to be sharing the study results momentarily, but first, because many of our districts are using multi-tiered systems of supports and services, and because much of my work is with general and special education, I want to make sure that we understand that the USTARS Plus model is a very good fit for how we might work with children of high potential and children with gifts and talents within an RTI or multi-level system of supports and services. The universal tier, or Tier 1, is where we do the whole class observations, where we look at the high-end environment, creating that universal tier of high quality and excellence, nurturing and responding to student needs, and building family partnerships. Tier 2 of the tiered approach would be the partnership and collaboration between general education and gifted education, using flexible grouping and scaffolded interventions, enhancements, and supports that focus on students' needs that we have recognized. Continuing with differentiated instruction and family partnerships. The third tier, or the most intensive tier, is where we begin to think about possible nomination for formal identification. We continue appropriate enhancements and services, continue the collaboration, and bring families more into the mix. And we begin to say, is this a child that we should be nominating for formal identification? And do we have a body of evidence that would support that nomination? If you are interested in this, we have done a fair amount of writing. The Council for Exceptional Children has published a book on response to intervention for gifted students through the TAG, the Association for Gifted and Talented. USTARS is featured in that. It is edited by myself and Susan Johnson, a colleague and friend. We also have other information if you are interested in how this kind of an approach fits within a tiered framework of services. So what are some of the research findings? Well, with professional development, we find that teachers are better able to recognize culturally and linguistically diverse children with high potential. Using the TOPS and after professional development, teachers are also more confident in their ability to meet the needs of children within their classroom. And they are using more differentiated instruction. They are also providing more hands-on science and math. These all are triangulated. These findings are triangulated across the studies, and we used fidelity of implementation rubrics to help us judge, as well as teacher input and administrator input. The findings for the family. Findings for the families indicate, and these are surveys with over 6,000 families over the course of 3.5 to 4 years, depending on the implementation cycle. Families feel more confident that teachers understand their child and are working to meet their child's needs. Again, these are families in schools that are highly impacted by poverty, by diversity, by areas where families have oftentimes felt disenfranchised rather than included. Family engagement and involvement has actually increased in the schools. The final finding that was, all of these are statistically significant findings. The final finding that we are so excited about is a child-based finding. Again, over 6,000 data points of children surveyed using a child-friendly survey across the years of implementation, using as a comparison matched pair delayed onset implementation schools. The children in the USTARS Plus schools report being statistically significantly happier than children in the comparison schools. And this, our statistician labeled the happiness variable. And we were thrilled with that. And again, at some point we can unpack some of this a little bit more. I hope you're adding questions. We're going to have a little bit of time for some questions. It's time to kind of weigh in on your questions in the chat area if you have some, and we'll be able to kind of tackle that as well. What we believe firmly is that the USTARS Plus approach, if implemented fully, using the materials and the TOPS, and providing the professional development that will support teachers and classrooms and schools, will help us, and we have validated this through the research studies, will help us address the disproportionate underrepresentation of children, while helping us increase access to high-end learning opportunities for all of our learners. We firmly believe that address should not drive access. It should not matter where a child lives. They should have access to engaging, enriching, supported, and challenging learning opportunities. And the USTARS Plus materials are designed to help teachers accomplish this and to help students and families benefit from this. So we have some time for some questions, and I think we can see if people have questions in the chat room. We have only just a few minutes for this, but I think we have 5 or 10 minutes Does anyone have a burning question or something that you feel like we have not quite covered yet? I'm seeing. Which districts in Texas are using this? Right now, I don't know of any districts in Texas that are using the USTARS model. Last year, for the Texas Gifted Education Conference, I came and did a presentation sharing the information, and I believe we are working on my coming back to do a full day session with the Texas Gifted Education Conference, and I do not have those dates yet. I believe that's in November, though, at the end of November, the Texas State Conference, 29th and 30th, and I am not positive of that, but that's what we've been talking about. The Cypress Fairbanks ISD, which is in the Houston area, is looking at this as a model. So we would love to partner with some people in Texas, and we are kind of looking at that as a place where we think the work is a really good fit, and we've had lots of interest from that. Within North Carolina, we have several districts that are working with us, and our North Carolina districts include Asheboro. We have about 18. The Cherokee Reservation is working with us. Rutherford County has an excellent site. Asheville City has been working with us. Chapel Hill Carborough. Durham County is coming on board. Kannapolis is coming on board. So if you're in North Carolina, you should feel free to email me. You could also talk perhaps with Kim Lewis, who's also, I believe, in McDowell County and is looking at coming on board. And our state director in North Carolina, Sneha Shah Coltrane, is the co-developer of USTARS Plus, and I think she is looking at ways to support districts in North Carolina who would like to kind of come on board for this work. Some of the literature being the same as Marilyn Burns' activities. Was there collaboration? Deborah, very good question. And no, we did not work directly with Marilyn Burns, but I absolutely agree with you. It's very simpatico. It's very much philosophically and in practice comfortable. So yes, very good pickup. Very good pickup. So other questions? Let me see. Okay. When we think, I guess I'll give a moment pause to see if there actually are any other questions. And see what we're getting. Okay. When we think about the USTARS Plus approach, and we think about the importance of bringing young children on board, young children coming on board from a strength-based model before the achievement gap begins to escape us, before children begin to view themselves as at risk, before children begin to feel like they are not going to be successful in school. This is critical. So the focus being with young children is very critical, and the focus being with all children is very critical. And it does, Marjorie indicates that it would seem that this kind of approach would reduce over-identification of ESI students who might otherwise be referred for special education. We did not look specifically at the over-identification of students in special education as part of our studies, but you are right on target, Marjorie. If we help teachers understand that many of the behaviors that used to get students referred to for special education supports and services may actually reflect that the student is really bright and needs additional support. So while we didn't do specific data collection on that, you are right on target that this seems to be the case, that we do a much better job of being strength-based and recognizing strengths. The question about am I familiar, Jeffrey asked the question with C-scope, and how does this blend with C-scope? I am not familiar with that. If you could spell it out, that would be helpful. I might be familiar with it if I was looking at the actual spelling. And the Spanish translations were done for the family involvement pieces, the pieces that go home with the child, and the family involvement packets are provided on disc as well as in hard copy. And the Spanish translations are there to make sure that for children whose primary home language is Spanish, we can have access to the materials. And which level of staff development is included within the program? There are 3 levels for each of the modules. There are 7 modules. Every module has a beginning level, an intermediate level, and an advanced level. And the modules themselves are designed to be conducted over a 3-year period if one was to kind of go from start to finish. But because different schools have very different needs, they can also be differentiated. So if your school already has an outstanding science model and an outstanding science program, then you may need less support for the science intervention piece of it. If you have a very well-developed differentiated instruction, then you may be able to kind of jump directly to the more advanced differentiated instruction piece. The piece that is absolutely critical is the observation, systemic observation piece, and that really is a critical piece. So for each of the modules, there are 3 levels, and the levels themselves move through beginning, intermediate, and advanced. And teachers, the materials, professional development materials, PowerPoint materials, and the manual are available or will be available shortly through the Council for Exceptional Children. Kathleen, I don't have a catalog right here with me, but the manual and the professional development modules, all 21 of the individual professional development levels and activities, are available. We've tried to be, I think, very reasonable with the pricing, and I don't have that. Kathleen, do you have that by chance?
Well, I have, I have a catalog here, and I'm looking at the pricing, but they're sort of in pieces of pricing for the folders, for the family science packet, for the science and literature connections. There's a teacher set and a professional development set. But something that I was going to mention at the end, but I can mention it now, is that everyone participating here today will get a discount on the purchase of the materials, and that will be coming out in the email that everybody receives tomorrow.
Wonderful. That is wonderful. And Kate Rich has just indicated that you can go to the cec.sped.org and you can go to the store and you can kind of see the materials. The TOPS folders are $19.95 for a set of teacher TOPS, which is 1 whole class and 5 individual. And they're $16.95 for members. So if you know a member, that would be great. Estimated cost for a single campus is something, Jeffrey, that we would really need to talk about depending on the teachers. Teacher kits, and we really believe that every teacher should have their very own family science book, science and literature book, and top set. And the top sets are renewable, so they would need to be each year. But we believe each of the teachers should have that. And so a family kit, a teacher kit would need to be purchased. And the Science and Literature Connections is $36.95, and for non-members it's for members it's $30.95. Anyway, I don't want to get into all of this, but you can email Kate Rich if you want more information, but you can also go onto the website. And with the offer of a discount, I think that would be fabulous. And Kate has put her email up so that if you're interested in talking with her about that. Now, Jeffrey and everyone, please know that while you can purchase the professional development kit, and you can, and we would support you in doing your own professional development, that is where some of the additional costs come in, because it's through the professional development that teachers begin to have time to dig deeply in on the skills and what does it mean to differentiate? How do I put that in my classroom? What does it look like when I recognize a student's potential? How do I communicate with families and parents? So the professional development work is very important. The professional development kit is available, and you can do that as an in-house kind of a professional development, and or you can use things like the webinar and things that might help you kind of move this forward in your district. We can also pair you with districts that are implementing, so you can ask questions. And Colorado has several districts that are implementing. Ohio has several. North Carolina has several. Louisiana has districts. So we can find a district that is somewhat close by where they have experience with this, and they can talk with you about it from a district, from a practitioner. Kate's email is KATER for Kate Rich at cec.sped.org, cec.sped.org. And she may be able to help you with some of this. And you can also reach me as well. I'm not sure, Kathleen, if we've shared my email, but I'm happy to have follow-up conversations if my email is on the next slide. But let me summarize just with this thought as kind of final U-Stars thought. Failure to help gifted children reach their potential is a societal tragedy. How can we measure the loss of a sonata, the curative drug, the absence of political insight? These are the difference between what we are and what we could be as a society. Thank you so much. And Kathleen, I'm going to turn it back over to you in the final moments. Thank you all of the participants. Very much enjoyed your questions and your comments.
Thank you, Mary Ruth, for a wonderful presentation. And we can certainly tell from